John 6, feeding of the 5,000. This is the only miracle that happens in all four Gospels. In all the things that Jesus does and says, and with all the things that people see him do, this is the miracle most often remembered and recorded in the Gospels. And rightfully so. It's amazing. So let's jump into this together. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up to the mountain, sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When he looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. All right, we can stop here for a second. Jesus introduces the concept of bread here. Later in the chapter, Jesus announces twice that he's the bread of life. I don't see this as a coincidence. In some ways, this miracle story heightens, or the writer of John uses the story to heighten, that Jesus is the bread of life. And there's enough bread for everyone, with lots left over. Now, we say it's the feeding of the 5,000, but John never gives us that number. When we jump over to Matthew, he uses that number, but he acknowledges that that number is men only. We know women and children are present too. So let's just do the math. Let's say half the men present themselves or are present with families. Those half average 2 kids per family. With just that math, we're up to 12,500 human bodies who need to eat. But it's probably more. This is a huge crowd that's clearly not participating in social distancing. Imagine 12,500 people marching towards something, looking for hope. But why? Verse 2, a large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. This is something we need to see. People are following Jesus because they see him as someone who leads with compassion. He meets people, especially sick people, where they are, as they are. But he doesn't leave them there. He heals them. He gives what he has to help the group. He leads with compassion, and he gives what he has to give. This is such an important point. Christians who seek to imitate Christ must be people who lead with compassion, ready to give what they have to those who need it. Verse 7, Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told the disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up, and from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that had been done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who has come into the world." There is so much good here. I mean, the numerology, 5 and 2, making a holy 7, and it will be blessed and turned into 12 extra baskets. That holy number of 12, that matters in some way. The overflowing baskets bringing back the abundance. It allows us to see this conversation in John of scarcity versus abundance. This matters. There's so many cool ways to think of this story. You can even think of it historically. Jesus is often considered to be the one whom the prophets wrote about. If you remember from 2 Kings 4, Elisha feeds a multitude barley as well. Maybe John 6 is Jesus' way of saying that I'm the new Elisha, and I don't give out the least expensive peasant food of barley. I give bread and fish. This matters. You could look at this through a social study, scientific lens. Everyone eats their fill. and there's left over. This matters. Think about some of Jesus' other miracles. He turns water into wine, leaves massive amounts of wine left over. The disciples haul in a great catch of fish, and it almost breaks their nets. There's more fish than they could eat in a lifetime. He spreads 3/4 of the seed on the ground in Mark 4, and he knows that it won't take, but he has so much to spare, he just gives it to every ground. There's 12 overflowing baskets here. All of these stories show abundance. Jesus is teaching us that God's love comes to us in abundance through compassion. God's love meets us where we are, as we are, but doesn't leave us there. A few years ago, I came across a social scientist who posed a new theory about this story, and I can't shake it out of my mind. It's that good. Now, what I'm about to say is not meant to replace the biblical or historical account of the story in any way. It's just intriguing. What if the miracle is not that food appeared out of nothing, but that people instead were moved by Jesus' compassion to then give what they had to the good of the group? You ponder this. What if the 12,500 people who chased Jesus down on foot anticipated a long day? So they too brought with them a snack or a meal. And what if, following the servant leadership of Jesus, they too gave to the group what it was that they brought? 12,500 people offering their resources for the good of the group. It's plausible, even probable. Would it be any less of a miracle? I don't think so. We're in a world in which resources do seem scarce. And it might be that I don't have enough, but collectively we do. As a community, we have things to give. We can collect and give things out. We can donate, we can serve. Perhaps what John 6 can teach us is that miracles happen because good people like you decide scarcity is no longer your framework. Unity is. Love is. For what happens to us or me affects us. We are to love one another. Now, I'm not asking you to be Jesus. Jesus is already with us. I'm asking you to be a participant in the crowd. What if we gave what we brought to the good of the group, and then we let God bless it, God break it, and then let God help us serve it to those who need it? We are a part of God's miracle-working business here, not because we come up with the miracle, but because we surrender to it. When we offer what we have to those in need, we reflect the love of Christ in the world. And when others see this kind of love, they start reflecting it too. This is how miracles happen today. It starts with God, and then it's carried forth by you.